Hey everyone. I want to talk about how we need to prepare for the unexpected and a little tip and trick that I used with patients and loved ones when I was working in hospice and palliative care, and even something that I use now. My name is Abigail. I'm here to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life. Let's get into it today. In this whole phenomenon of death and the whole experience of the loss, what I need to stress to you is that even with the best hospice care, even with laying out the plans of what this can look like, even through all the other things I have showed you and yet to show you, there's still so much more to cover. I need to tell you that one of the most important things you need to be prepared for is the unexpected, especially because when we are dealing with hospice and palliative care, and we're dealing with, first of all, the person who is dying is now in a state where their body is not resilient like it used to be. It's not, not able, as we've said before, not able to use the treatments like they're usually intended to for curing. So we're really focusing on comfort care, right? But even then, because of their state, because they're so fragile, in this state of fragility, things pop up. They seemingly seem to happen, quote, all of a sudden, without, out of the blue, those types of experiences. And this is true because this will happen in hospice. I've heard of patients, or I've heard of family members, patients actually, and family members who said, I didn't expect that. And this is something that I need to tell you to expect. You need to expect the unexpected. You need to expect that things that you really weren't prepared for are going to happen because of the fragility of the state of this person who's dying. And not just of the person who's dying, but the loved ones around that person. Expect that you may not, this may be like the first type of death that you experienced or experience from a standpoint of a parent, of a child, of a friend, whatever it is. You may surprise yourself in how you start to kind of come across people, how you deal or don't deal with the stress. You may start to do certain things like use certain substances, start to seek comfort in food, start to seek comfort in alcohol, in sex, in, other type of, in social media scrolling. I mean, we all kind of have that issue, right? Just, really numbing yourself by doing certain other things. All of this to, again, say that when we're in these types of really stressful situations, especially when we're talking about end of life and loss from a standpoint of a loved one, and you're watching your loved one die, I want to tell you that you're going to try to do everything right, try to do everything the best way possible, and still, your loved one can do something funky. So let me give you an example. You may be taking care of your mom, your father, a friend, whatever, and maybe you have them at home, or maybe you have them in a nursing facility, whatever, and you've done all the right things. You've taught them about what they wanted. They've got all their paperwork together. You've enlisted hospice care, and they're getting good care from the facility or from you, whatever it is. And you've done all of that. And all of a sudden you get this call that even though, they've been basically dying and basically mostly unconscious, they sustained a major fracture to their head because they rolled out of bed at night, or they tried to get out of bed at night. And you're like, well, wait. They've been in bed for like the last 2 weeks. How is it that they're having a fracture? And how is this happening? So let me tell you, there could be a couple of reasons why. They could be in that rally period that I recently talked about. There is that rally that happens before death where you get this surge of energy, even of maybe momentary moments of lucidity, and maybe that person needed to go to the bathroom. Maybe they felt like they were going to get up and going to go to work. It could be many, many things, but they tried to get up, but obviously their body was declining and has been in bed for a certain amount of time, and they're terminal, so their body can't sustain their weight anymore, so they fall. And people who are elderly, when they hit their head, there's certain layers in the neurological system that if they sustain any trauma, even if it's just a little, looks like a tap of their head, literally looks like a tap, that happens, they can sustain a severe, serious bleed that could cause them to die within hours even. So that could happen, or they could roll out of bed and they could easily break a hip or break, part of their shoulder, arm, whatever it is. And that can happen. And it can happen even though it looked like they just rolled out of bed and maybe just tapped their body on the floor. Because again, that person, that dying body, that hospice body, that terminal body is terminal. They're 10 times more fragile. That's not completely accurate, but they're extremely, extremely fragile. And it could be up to 10 times, it could be more, it could be less, but they're extremely fragile compared to a body who is not terminal. So they're going to respond with more fragility to certain insults, and certain traumas, certain other illnesses, things like that. They're going to respond simply differently because they're terminal. And not only are they going to just respond differently, but they're going to show up and do different things on different days. You could have one person who's totally calm for, a good week straight, and then they develop possibly like a urinary tract infection or something else is going on. Maybe they have a little constipation. And the only way you know that something's going on is because they all of a sudden start to act agitated and they start to say things that are uncharacteristic of them. And again, you didn't do anything wrong. This is part of a dying process and things that you can see. And there are so many more examples that I can give. These are just kind of some general examples that I saw a lot of times. But what I need to tell you is that you need to prepare for an unexpected event, at least an unexpected call, an unexpected sighting of your loved one that is dying, that they're not going to look like themselves. They're not going to act like themselves. They're going to be a different person as they're going through this death and dying process. And I need to normalize this for you. Know that, number one, unexpected stuff is going to happen. Number two, it's going to feel like it came out of the blue. It's going to feel like it is like, oh my gosh, what happened? All of a sudden this thing happened. I didn't expect it. And it's going to feel overwhelming. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's going to feel overwhelming when you see it. So what I need you to do is, when you have a moment, just even 5 minutes, you don't have to spend too long. When you have a moment, and if you're in a situation where you're dealing with a loved one, maybe they're not quite as ill yet, or maybe they are right now on hospice and they're dying, whatever it may be, just take a moment and imagine something out of the blue happening to this loved one. Just imagine it. Oh, they all of a sudden stopped eating, or I fed them last night, they were fine, and now the nursing facility has called me saying that they had aspirated, and now they have a lung infection. Even though, mom, when I was feeding mom at the nursing facility last night, she was fine. She wasn't really coughing that much. She might have had a little cough, but I thought she was just clearing her throat. Things like this. And know that, and just imagine this happening. Imagine the loved one, maybe you find them one morning, you get up and you find them in their room laying on the floor, or half of their bodies out of their bed. Or you come into their room and all of a sudden, someone who was still pretty conscious and talking to you is all of a sudden unconscious. They're still alive, they're still breathing, but they're all of a sudden unconscious. I want you to imagine some of those, an example of that, for example. I want you to imagine that and imagine what it might feel like for you. It's going to feel, whoa, overwhelming. It's going to feel like, oh my God, what's going on? Do I need to call 911? Do I need to call hospice? What do I do? Okay. And just pay attention to your reaction. Pay attention to how it feels to experience this unexpected type of thing. And I would say, if you can, in that 5 minutes, just take out a piece of paper and write that down. Write down what those feelings are, okay? And then take a moment and really look at what those feelings are. Was it shock? Was it overwhelm? Was it fear? Was it just complete and utter just freeze state, like you didn't know what to do? And looking at that, then what I want you to do is say, okay, a couple things. Number one, when this happens, if I want to, I can look at this list because I know already what I was feeling and what I could feel. And I want you to just normalize your nervous system and familiarize your nervous system with these feelings, with feeling the unexpected happening. And the more we can do that, the more prepared we will be when the shit hits the fan, the yogurt hits the fan, the fudge, whatever it is. When it hits the fan, we already know, like, okay, I was here before. We know what this feels like. We know I'm going to feel this overwhelming stuff that I'm feeling, this state of just like thinking of a million things. I'm feeling that, and that's normal. That's part of it. Okay. And secondly, knowing that you're going to feel that way, what are you going to do? Now, obviously, hopefully, if you're working with a hospice team, hopefully you're going to call hospice, right, first, unless they specifically tell you to call 911 because there could be an issue or something different with a code status, for example. But talk to hospice, make sure you get the right direction from them and the direction from the medical professionals that you're working with, and have your little plan. And I would make it as easy as one step, maybe two step. If anything happens, the step should be call hospice, for example. Okay. And then number two, maybe when they're on the phone, the plan is, how do I make sure that mom so-and-so is safe, is comfortable until you come, and decide on that plan. So all this to say, again, when stuff is going to happen to a dying body, that's going to be unexpected. It's going to completely throw you for a loop. It's going to feel like it came out of nowhere. It came out all of a sudden. And the feelings for that can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. You can go into a freeze state. You can feel like you're starting to panic. You can feel like, what did I miss? I thought we prepared for this completely. And the doctor missed something then, or the hospice team didn't tell me that this could happen, whatever it is. Because the unexpected is going to happen, and nobody can tell you exactly every single thing, because you would just, your mind would be blown on all the major things, that anything that could happen all of a sudden. So the point is to take this knowledge that you have now, take a few moments regularly to think about, what would it feel like if I found my loved one who I'm caring for right now, or who I put on hospice, something happened all of a sudden, including all of a sudden you get the call that they died last night, after you visited them and they were talking to you. Again, a dying body does unexpected things. It handles things differently. And know that, familiarize yourself with those feelings, and then come up with your plan of what you're going to do. One or two things. Call hospice, and then find out how you can keep your loved one safe, or find out what your next step is, for example. So I want to keep this kind of short, because all of these topics I feel are just a lot to digest sometimes, especially if you're already in a situation where you're dealing with loss, death, and dying of a loved one. So let me know if you have questions about any of this, if I need to go into a little bit more, if you want me to do another example or a couple more examples of what could possibly happen. I'm happy to do that too. Let me know what's going to be helpful for you. And let's keep this going. My name is Abigail. I'm here to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying, so we die better at the end of life. Thinking about you. Thank you so much for popping in today. I'll see you soon.